Hello everyone, welcome back to the MotoGP Podcast. It is me, Jordan Moreland, joined by Lewis Duncan, and we're here to discuss a few things that have developed over the past few days. Now, as most of you probably know, the region of Valencia especially, and across Spain, there's been devastating floods that have, it's been really terrible to see the images and the videos and stuff, and it does factor into MotoGP as you know, in a few weeks' time, the final round is due to be held at the Ricardo Tormo circuit in Valencia. Now, Lewis, it's a unprecedented situation for MotoGP at this time. We don't know what's going to happen. There's plenty of rumours, but firstly, it's all about just think about those that are affected by the horrible tragedies that we've seen over there in Spain, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems almost crass to be kind of talking about the racing situation, and a lot of the riders today in Malaysia have said as such. And I think actually MotoGP can be quite proud of its riders today, the way they've handled themselves, the way they've carried the championship, and the way they've spoken with grace and real intelligence about the situation and humbleness about the situation really is commendable. It's a horrible situation, and I think it's a situation that it cuts MotoGP deep. This is also, it's a championship with a lot of Spanish riders in there. Of course, Dorna Sports is a Spanish company, so it is in a lot of ways a personal, a really personal tragedy as well to see what's happened in Valencia, and unfortunately it has come a very kind of awkward time for the championship. There's no escaping that fact. There's 2 rounds to go. There's a championship to be decided, and currently we're looking at a situation where we don't really have a final round kind of confirmed, which is logistically and legally as well just so complicated for Dorna. And I think before we go any further into discussion, my sympathies go out to Dorna Sports. This is a horrible situation for any sports promoter to be involved in, and yeah, I think we need to give them time and be patient with their decisions as well.
Yeah, definitely. I echo those thoughts as well. And I real, like you said, with the riders, that they were all they weren't human. They were so human today, and you got that aspect from them, and especially when you have leading riders like Marc Marquez, a massive figure across Spain. He comes out and he says in his English debrief to us on the ground at Malaysia, if it would feel wrong to fix up the circuit, the outside of it, and to then be racing when there's people in that area who don't even have a home. It just shows that the magnitude of this is, and really where the riders are thinking up, because a lot of them are thinking it's not best to go to Valencia and race, but then that adds up the question, well, is it going to be cancelled? Are we going to have an alternative? It's very, very complex, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed, and I think Marc Marquez was spot on with that, and a lot of the riders echoed his sentiments as well. As we've all seen the pictures of the access road to the circuit Ricardo Tormo, and it is destroyed. It's not going to be an easy fix, and you look at the other infrastructure around the city. It's not just that area; it's the whole city. There's a lot of really horrifying aerial shots coming out of the region and the city of all the destruction, and it's the local government resources will be stretched immensely thin over the next really a couple of months. This isn't going to be a small cleanup operation and rehousing operation. This is a long process ahead of the people of Valencia, and for the Ricardo Tormo circuit to get some sort of kind of special treatment to be able to get the circuit, or the access to the circuit fixed over more critical, road networks and rail networks and stuff would be wrong. That is the fact of the matter. It would be wrong. There is nothing more important than human lives. Sport comes second. It's a great escape for everyone, but it comes second, and MotoGP is no different. And these are ultimately the questions that Dorna and the championship will be wrestling with really over the next few days, as they will look at I think the Formula E test, which is scheduled for this week, they've talked about trying to look at other access roads to the circuit, which there aren't really many that would be suitable for the kind of logistical operation that MotoGP is, even if it was scaled back to just the Premier class, which has kind of been talked about. Maybe Moto2 and Moto3 with those championships done, maybe they can stay at home for whatever comes next. They will be looking at that very, very deeply, but I think this, as you say, the consensus among the riders is that we shouldn't go there. And I think you look at the things of, 100,000+ fans are expected to come to Valencia. There is no way to get them into the circuit. There's no way to park them. You're going to have, a paddock, even a scaled down paddock is 1,500 people. That's 1,500 people that need somewhere to stay. And that's 1,500 hotel rooms, etc., that are going to have to go to people that have lost their homes. Families, people have lost their homes. There's a lot of devastation in the region. That's us media types and mechanics, all the rest of it, are not important enough to have those hotel rooms over the people who need them the most. So that's another thing. There are other elements like health service and security, the police as well. All these things are all really, already stretched. They can't really be diverted to run a racing event for the better part of a week. My thought is that we will not have a Valencia Grand Prix this year. What happens beyond that is that's obviously the big source of debate right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was summed up best by Paco Bagnaia in the press conference where he said, ethically it wouldn't be right because if when you go to Valencia, it's always a kind of a party atmosphere. It just wouldn't feel right to do that. And everything you've said is so spot on. You can't have
100
sport like this becoming the priority, and
100.
People need to understand that it's not important at the moment, and the people around those areas, my heart goes out to them, and like you said, the death toll is currently, I believe it's at 95, but it's believed to be way more than that. And when you see the images, it's sad. It really is sad. So it is, and I just hope that whatever happens over the next few days from the government and whatever steps they put into place, that's priority. I don't think MotoGP going to Valencia is needed at all. And as you said, Lewis, this is where the debate comes in now, because we do have a World Championship that is going to be decided, whether it is this weekend or a few weeks' time, or I don't know, a month's time. From what people are saying in the paddock, there's multiple sort of, not theories, it's such scenarios that could happen, and circuits that are being named. The main one that I've kind of seen that maybe has some sort of, how could I say, it could be possible, Qatar potentially in December. What do you think of that? Do you think that would work?
I think as far as a circuit to be used, I think Qatar is one of the more realistic options, because really a lot of the logistical headaches and hurdles of Qatar are solved by the fact that the circuit can just throw endless money at the problem. That, let's not beat around the bush. The reason why we would go to Qatar is because it has way more money than any other European circuit to manage this sort of thing. It's being talked about as being the 6th to the 8th of December weekend as a potential, as a possibility, which would make it the week after the Formula One race in Qatar. So, things will be in place, but, the Formula One operation, the MotoGP operation are quite, different. They'll be able to kind of rent the same television cameras and stuff like that, but like the timing systems, for example, are different. So those are going to have to be relayed, and they're going to have to find marshals, and they're going to have to, MotoGP is going to have to figure out how to get all of its freight over there, and that's the next hurdle. Organising a race in the space of a month, 3 weeks really, if we're being kind of realistic about it with the setup time, is not easy. I mean, a lot of people have cited the fact that we went to Misano again this year. There was 3 months before we got to that point, so that's enough time to fix up a scenario where you can hold a race. There are other problems with Qatar. It would clash with the final round of the Formula One season, which is in Abu Dhabi, so the time zones are very similar, and if the championship can also be won there, it's going to knock MotoGP right out of the news cycle, which is not really a great. I don't see that as being a better alternative to the championship being just ended this weekend in Malaysia. Carmelo Espeleta, I think, has spoken to GP1 this Thursday, 31st of October, and has kind of suggested that the date for the final race will stay the same. Cynically, I would suggest that's got to do with the television contracts. I would suggest that they are written up to the final race date rather than the end of the year. But also, if this championship does have to run on into December, that's an awful lot of burden to put on team personnel, mechanics, everyone, which would then fall on a weekend that is exactly 2 months before pre-season session for 2025 starts. I made the point on social media that there won't be a lot of very happy faces about that. People want to race, yes, but people have also got families, they've got lives, it's been a really, really tough year. It's been a tough portion of the calendar this past few months. We're at the last of a triple header, which is the second triple header.
Yeah.
What was it, 6 races in 7 weeks? And a lot of those people have been away from home for probably the better part of 9. So that's the other problem with having the championship extend into Qatar into December, is that it becomes too much of a burden on people. And we have to protect the people in the paddock. We've got to, they deserve to have time with their families. They deserve to go on the holidays that they probably had long booked, for the couple of weeks after the season ends. That also is more important than some bikes going round in a circle.
Exactly. And the good point that you make is that, yeah, it might be seen as a quick fix, but it's not really, is it?
No.
It might have the best possible setup for the moment, but like you say, a good point about the timing change that needs to be done with the systems and marshals, and even like I just thought little things like sponsor boards need changed, like little things like that, like painting things over and just doing that. And say we got that confirmed, it was Qatar, you then have to wait 5 weeks for another race, and it's like, does the hype die down then? Does it? Or it's like, how do you try and make that a marketable thing,
Especially if you end up in a situation where the championship can be won very easily in the sprint.
Exactly. And then the Sunday becomes irrelevant then.
Yeah. That is a very good point you make, Jordan, is that you need to sustain, as a championship, Dorna's a promoter and it's a marketing, entity as well, essentially. So it would kind of not really work from that perspective, which I think would probably also play into Espeleta's kind of comments in GP1 that it's, we want to try and keep that end date. So that's been seen as, maybe do we stay in Sepang for a final race in a couple of weeks' time? There's there is an event scheduled for in a couple of weeks' time, but it seems like it can be moved. According to our guy on the ground, Pete McLaren, is in Sepang this weekend for us. So that's possible, but Michelin will need time to make tyres.
Yep.
They might have some in reserve, but probably not, because there isn't really a circuit on the calendar that's quite like Sepang in terms of tyre demands. It's fast, it's heavy braking, a lot of long corners that put a lot of load into the tyres, but also really high heat as well. So there's,
exactly.
It's not actually just a case of, well, we'll just use whatever tyres we've got, because all the tyres have to be made for, each specific circuit and the specific climatic conditions that race is going to be held in. So, it's not a simple case of just like, oh, well, we could just stay in Sepang. Maybe, but a lot more that goes into it than just that.
Yeah, I think it's quite eye-opening actually for a lot of people when you think, oh, you just do it like a week later, and then you hear, well, we need this, we need that. It's an operation that I think when something like this happens, you really understand the magnitude it is to run these events and how just the little things you need to have in place to always make sure everything can go ahead of time. And then just going back to the European races, I've seen a few people suggest, well, could we do Misano again? Could we do Portimao, for example? Jerez, but obviously that's affected as well by the floods. Barcelona, but it all comes down at the time of year, Lewis, doesn't it? It's cold in these places.
Yeah, well, you'll all remember Barcelona 2020, that COVID season. That was quite late in the year, and that was very, very cold.
Yeah.
I remember we went to Aragon as well around about that time of the year, and the practices had to be moved back because it was too cold in the morning. So these are issues that will have to be considered. Portugal in December will be cold. So yeah, you run out of options. Misano would be cold at that time of year and quite wet. And also, I'm not sure what the situation would be in terms of hotels and stuff like that, because it's a seaside resort. It's out of season. Is there going to be the infrastructure for people to actually be able to stay there? So it really isn't. There is no easy solution to this, and there is not really going to be a right answer to this. And like I say, whatever Dorna does, everyone is just kind of going to have to accept, because this is really, really complicated. Races are expensive to run. They're logistically very difficult, and there's not that many places we can go on such short notice at this time of the year. We can look at this as maybe being an argument for, well, if you want to have 20 plus race calendars, then maybe you need to have a rethink about that. I think it also does raise should raise the debate of, this is the second race now this year that has been affected by severe flooding. Remember Kazakhstan was initially postponed because of that. We saw last year with Formula One, with Imola as well, was cancelled because of extreme flooding. We are now in a phase of, human history where climate change is having a massive, massive effect on everything, and sport isn't escapable from that. And if there's one sport that's going to be more affected than any other, it's going to be motorsport. So there now needs to be these conversations and about contingencies for this type of thing, because it's becoming, it was talked about, this Valencia rain and flooding is, the worst ever. But it's, these are now once in every sort of year events really now in a lot of places. Italy had the same thing last year. The year before, I think it was Belgium and places in Germany had something similar. These are happening quite regularly now, and motorsport does need to kind of wake up to that fact and start putting the contingencies in place for these kind of disaster scenarios, really. And I'm kind of surprised that we don't really have that after the COVID kind of situation. That was obviously a really kind of logistically complicated thing to begin with, and then they managed to get a calendar for that first year, and then in 2021 they were very very adaptable to changing kind of scenarios in different countries. I'm a bit surprised we're not in a situation where we are a bit more flexible in that way in terms of looking at disaster scenarios, but I think this might, or it should definitely bring about that conversation.
Yeah, I think it will do. I think it will. It's a really good point to raise, so it is. And going back to this weekend, how do you think it is for Jorge Martin and Pecco Bagnaia, the two title contenders?
Scenario.
How do you think it is for them? Do they approach it as it is the last weekend? Or do you think they're waiting to be told, okay, maybe, I don't know, could they be told tomorrow? Or do we get news then? Do we get news on Saturday? Just so they know the situation, because we'll come on the scenarios that could happen. There's been talk of potentially 2 races this weekend, maybe 2 Grand Prix, so one on the Saturday, one on the Sunday. That could potentially work. Or double points, for example. Could that be something that could be looked at?
Yeah, I think quietly both Pecco and Martin should have been told, whether it's by Dorna, whether it's by the teams, look, there's a very real possibility this is the last round, so you must treat it as such. I'd be very surprised if those conversations hadn't have happened. You've got to feel for the two of them, because Martin's in a situation where you can win the championship this weekend, and now in some ways there's a bit more pressure on him, because if he makes a mistake, he might not then have
a chance to
the opportunity next time. Pecco's in a slightly different situation where, okay, maybe this is going to be his last chance, but he's the one that has to make. He's the one that's already under threat of one more mistake anyway is game over. So I think if there's of the two of them, I think Pecco will probably be in the slightly better position than Martin. If there is a situation where we have 2 Grand Prix or Grand Prix length races, I think would probably have to be the correct way of putting that, because you couldn't really, I think, again, contractually and stuff like that, with the Malaysian promoters having 2 Grand Prix would be would be tricky. These are just all the things that Dorna's going to have to think about, and it's really, I really don't envy them at all. I'm glad that's not my job. If there was 2 Grand Prix distance races this weekend, then that's a better solution to make sure there's maximum points and that type of thing. If anything, again, that would probably help Pecco a bit more, because he's generally a bit better on Grand Prix distances. He's got 8 Grand Prix wins this year. Double points have been talked about, which
scenario.
Yeah. I know it's controversial, honestly, I think is maybe the neatest solution, because only those 2 riders could win the championship now. So if you brought in double points, it's not all of a sudden going to, bring Marc or Renee into it. And really, you've got Saturday, Sunday, double points. You've got really both races now become vitally, vitally important. It kind of gives both the opportunities they would have if there were 2 rounds anyway. But these are decisions that will have to be made pretty quickly, and unfortunately, if there is going to be any change to the weekend, it's going to happen. It's going to have to be announced tomorrow, and that just completely throws everything into a spin. So it is really, really difficult, and ideally is if the weekend has to be run normally, is that Jorge Martin wins the championship somehow, and then that is it. That's probably the easiest thing for Dorna to happen, but of course that's not really very likely.
Yeah, it's very complex, and I do feel for a lot of especially those 2, because it's a situation where they could never have imagined it being like this, especially it's difficult. So it is.
And Martin as well, I feel sorry for, because if this becomes, he becomes a world champion, if he leaves this weekend leading the championship, and then they get to a point where they cannot physically do anything about a final round, and the championship is ended kind of retrospectively, it takes away the taste for him. It's this thing he's worked for, and it's kind of, it's not the scenario you want. And it's a horrible situation for a number of reasons. And they're like I say, I don't think there's really going to be an answer that's going to be a right one. There's not going to be one that's going to keep everyone happy. And I think everyone just needs to back the championship right now, and just back MotoGP, and just let them do what they need to do. And really, for the one and only time, I think, in history, maybe apart from the COVID pandemic and maybe the credit crisis as well, is let's just give Dorna the benefit of the doubt on this one, and leave them to it, and we'll keep the criticisms to one side for this occasion.
Yeah, I completely agree, and really that's all we have to discuss. Nothing, like I say, has been officially confirmed at the time of recording, and we'll have everything covered across Christ.net, all the latest news as it breaks. It'll be across social media as well, so make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'll put the links in the description below as well. Finally, just want to end it by saying what we said at the start: everyone that's been affected by the floods in Spain, our thoughts are with you, and they are the priority at the moment. So we'll keep you updated on any more news, but until next time, guys, thanks for listening, and take care.